Hello, all you freedom-loving people. After 2 Supreme Court wins to support President Trump's plan to deport gang members, the tariff plan is also seeing many successes, especially with China. Okay, let's get into it. The Supreme Court intervened in the dispute between President Trump and a federal judge over the deportation of a gang member. On Friday, Maryland District Judge Paula Sheeney ordered the Trump administration to help a Salvadoran citizen who was deported to El Salvador. She wanted him returned to the U.S. by Monday. The Salvadoran citizen was deported on March 15th by U.S. authorities for being a gang member. Earlier on Monday, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit denied the Trump administration's request for a stay of Judge Sheeney's decision. The Trump administration then filed an appeal asking the Supreme Court to intervene on an emergency basis. On behalf of the Supreme Court, Chief Justice John Roberts issued a stay suspending the lower court's ruling. Chief Justice Roberts' order does not address the underlying merits of the dispute and cannot be used to infer how the Supreme Court will ultimately rule, but the ruling gives the 9 Supreme Court justices additional time to consider the government's request more formally. The Trump administration later admitted in the lawsuit that the illegal immigrant was not a member of the Tren de Aragua gang, but the government has determined that the man is one of the leaders of another gang, MS-13. So the government does not intend to allow him to return to the United States again. Lawyers said the court's order simply requires U.S. officials to correct their own error, not compel foreign action. Dean John Sauer, the Justice Department's Deputy Attorney General for Litigation, argued in papers that were filed with the Supreme Court on Monday that the federal courts cannot order the president to engage in diplomatic activity. Trying to get the immigrant to return to the United States from El Salvador would require diplomatic negotiations between the two countries. On the same day, the Trump administration won another legal battle. The Supreme Court ruled 5-4 to allow the Trump administration to invoke the Alien Enemies Act, which was originally enacted in 1798 in order to carry out deportations targeting specific groups of immigrants. The ruling overturned a temporary injunction that was previously issued on March 15th by District of Columbia Federal Judge James Boasberg. On Monday, the court said, "We grant the application and vacate the temporary restraining orders." 5 Supreme Court justices, Roberts, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Thomas, and Alito, were in favor of vacating Boasberg's orders. The 3 liberal justices, Kagan, Jackson, and Sotomayor, dissented. In a dissent written by Justice Sonia Sotomayor, she argued that the court's deportation program could bypass judicial review and weaken legal protections for immigrants. Justice Amy Coney Barrett dissented in part, signaling that she still has reservations about procedural propriety. The court also emphasized that deportees must be afforded the basic safeguards of the judicial process. Even if the executive branch enforces the expulsion measure based on the Alien Enemy Act, the detainee should receive written notice within a reasonable time and have the opportunity to apply to the appropriate court for a writ of habeas corpus in accordance with the law in order to ensure that his or her rights are not denied. The Supreme Court has stated that legal challenges to such deportation actions should be brought in the federal court where the immigrant is detained, and therefore the case should be transferred to the Texas federal court. The legal proceedings in this case are still ongoing. In its ruling, the Supreme Court made it clear that it had not yet reached a conclusion on the substantive applicability of the Alien Enemies Act itself, but only on the procedure and venue of the trial. On Monday, Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba and President Trump had a telephone conversation, and they confirmed that Japan would send a senior team to the United States for negotiations. President Trump wrote on True Social, "Countries from all over the world are talking to us. Tough but fair parameters are being set. Spoke to the Japanese Prime Minister this morning. He is sending a top team to negotiate. Shigeru Ishiba said that he urged President Trump to reconsider tariffs in the call. He told President Trump that Japan has been the largest investor in the U.S. for 5 consecutive years. The tariff policy could jeopardize the ability of Japanese companies to invest in the U.S. The Japanese Prime Minister also said that if he had the opportunity to visit the United States, he would not simply seek a waiver of reciprocal tariffs, but would present the Trump administration with a package plan that would show what America's close ally can offer, emphasizing Japan's contribution to creating jobs in the United States through its investment. Similarly, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent also affirmed Japan's approach. Bessent wrote on X, "Japan remains among America's closest allies, and I look forward to our upcoming productive engagement regarding tariffs, non-tariff trade barriers, currency issues, and government subsidies. I appreciate the Japanese government's outreach and measured approach to this process." Today, President Trump slapped a 104% tariff on China, effective immediately. On Monday, President Trump had issued a warning that the U.S. would impose additional punitive tariffs of 50% on Chinese goods effective April 9th if Communist China does not lift its newly imposed 34% retaliatory tariff against the U.S. by April 8th. Moreover, all meetings and negotiations requested by the CCP will be terminated. The Chinese Communist Party announced on April 4th a retaliatory tariff against the United States, which means that starting April 10th, it will impose a 34% tariff on imports of U.S. origin on top of the current applicable tariff rate. President Trump condemned China's response. He wrote that China's latest tariffs come on top of their already record-setting tariffs, non-monetary tariffs, illegal subsidization of companies, and massive long-term currency manipulation. In announcing the reciprocal tariffs last Wednesday, President Trump held up a tariff chart that showed China's tariffs on the U.S. at 67%. Of course, this is not an apparent tariff, but an actual tariff, when all of the invisible tariffs are added up. But President Trump has dismissed China's ability to mount an effective countermeasure. China is already reeling from early tariff effects. President Trump wrote on Truth Social, "China has been hit much harder than the U.S., not even close. They and many other nations have treated us unsustainably badly." On Sunday night, as President Trump returned to the White House on Air Force One, he told reporters that the trade deficit with some countries is over $1 billion, but the trade deficit with China is over $1 trillion. When President Trump met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House on Monday, he was pressed by reporters about the tariff war with China. President Trump said that over the past 35 years, China has earned a lot of foreign exchange by exporting goods to the U.S. and while investing a lot of money in developing armaments. But President Trump will not allow this to continue. President Trump has already made this very clear to the head of the Chinese Communist Party, Xi Jinping. In the face of punitive tariffs and President Trump's hard-line approach, the CCP has responded in typical fashion. Instead of negotiating in good faith, it resorted to propaganda, and they complained about unilateral bullying. In response to President Trump's ultimatum, the Ministry of Commerce in Beijing issued a statement claiming that its retaliatory tariffs are legitimate, and that America's efforts are nothing more than blackmail. According to a Bloomberg report, 2 top Chinese state-linked bloggers with deep ties to Beijing's official media revealed that the CCP is considering a sweeping set of retaliatory measures. These supposed countermeasures include suspending cooperation with the U.S. on fentanyl, jacking up tariffs on American farm goods like soybeans and sorghum, blocking U.S. poultry, clamping down on American service industries, investigating U.S. intellectual property in China, and reducing or banning U.S. films. Over the years, Hollywood has gradually succumbed to the demands of the CCP. Hollywood has been softening its scripts to curry favor with the CCP regime. They have been blacklisting films that don't fit the CCP's agenda and even demanding pro-China content. Mainstream Hollywood is anti-Trump. Strictly speaking, they are in line with the Chinese Communist Party on this point. But when President Trump refused to back down on reciprocal tariffs, the Chinese Communist Party became furious, and they threatened to banish Hollywood entirely. This is what happens when you give in to totalitarian forces. American conservatives have raised their hands in favor of this measure of banning Hollywood by the Chinese Communist Party. Let's take a look at some of the comments from netizens. Honest Abe wrote, "Awesome. Now we can get patriotic American themes back in our movies. No more forced casting and script concessions just to get the film accepted in Chinese theaters." Mars Quaking wrote, "I see this as a positive thing for the entertainment industry." And Blue Green 808 wrote, "Wait, in retaliation, they are going to punish Hollywood? Do it." The EU doesn't like President Trump's tariffs either, and they don't know what to do about them, but at least they know what Beijing is doing is stupid. EU Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen has called on China to ensure a negotiated resolution to the tariff war. A phone call took place with Chinese Premier Li Qiang on April 8th. On the call, von der Leyen stressed the responsibility of Europe and China as two of the world's largest markets to support a strong reform trading system, free, fair, and founded on a level playing field. Recently, President Trump said that China badly wants to reach a deal with the United States, but they don't know how to start talks. President Trump posted on Truth Social, "We are waiting for their call. It will happen." There are two uninhabited islands, Heard Island and McDonald Island, in the southern Australian waters near Antarctica. However, these two islands have been included in the 10% tariff list. Many people are puzzled and surprised. The two islands are offshore territories of Australia. Australia's Trade Minister Don Farrell told ABC that taxing these places would clearly be a mistake because the islands are inhabited only by penguins. However, although these islands are completely uninhabited, with the last visit from people believed to be nearly 10 years ago, its export figures are puzzling. According to export data from the World Bank, the U.S. imported $1.4 million of products from these places in 2022, nearly all of which was machinery and electrical imports. According to the British Guardian, there is indeed a fishery in the area, but there are no buildings or human settlements. So to this day, no one knows what these products are. It's not hard to understand why U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said in a CBS interview on Sunday that if you exclude these places from the tariff list, countries are going to try to arbitrate the U.S. and they will be importing goods into the U.S. from those places. This approach by President Trump is closing the loophole. Lutnick cited that President Trump had imposed tariffs on China in 2018, and what Beijing did next is they started importing products into the United States through other countries. President Trump knows it, he's tired of it, and he's going to fix it. There is also an external territory of Australia, Norfolk Island, which is also on the tariff list. It has a population of 2,188 people and lies 1,000 miles northeast of Sydney. It was slugged with a tariff of 29%. According to the Observatory of Economic Complexity, Norfolk Island exported $655,000 worth of goods to the U.S. in 2023, with leather shoes valued at $413 being the main export. But George Plant, the administrator of Norfolk Island, told The Guardian there are no known exports from Norfolk Island to the United States. Bill Maher spilled some details about the meeting with President Trump during a recent conversation with Chris Cuomo. Even though he may not like some of President Trump's policies, he is now even being positive about President Trump's authenticity.
I mean, Trump
Really interesting.
is one of the most effective politicians, whatever you think of the policy and him as a person, just as a politician, just understanding that always lean in to being more who you are. The people are not savvy about issues, but they smell a phony a mile away. And that kind of shit, nobody else does it.
He also cited several examples of President Trump's speeches that moved him.
And sometimes kind of make me go, oh man, I got to give it up. Like when he did that thing where the guy came in from the Taliban and he said, this is an aerial picture of your house. If during our withdrawal, one American is hurt, just know I know where you live. I was like, oh, can we just play the music now? Because I don't care. It's Donald Trump and he's the worst person ever, blah, blah, blah. I fucking love that. One time they were doing something was going on with, and he said, you know what? When you come after New York, you got to go through me. It's like, oh, hometown boy. You know, he has those moments that no other politician has. And the Democrats have to find that guy.
Maher also said on X that he will have more to say about meeting President Trump on his show this coming Friday. And that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for your support of Front Page. Please remember that every like, comment, and share helps more people to see the truth. If you haven't already, please subscribe. And if you have already subscribed, we thank you. But please double check to make sure that you're still subscribed, because some of our audience have reported that they're somehow unsubscribed without their knowledge. We've also heard that some of you don't get notifications of our videos anymore on YouTube. So when you do subscribe on YouTube, please make sure to tap the notification bell as well. Okay, this is our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you heard today, please don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends and family, because everybody deserves to know the truth.